Hello and welcome to the Criticaleye Asia podcast, inspiring leaders to succeed. These podcasts engage on subjects at the forefront of business leaders' minds, always topical, thought-provoking and enabling you to learn from leaders and peers delivering amazing results, unpacking leadership and making it bite-sizable. We are here today to explore stepping up, and we're going to focus on stepping up as a group CEO. Very fortunate to have William Lowe, one of our Criticaleye board mentors, who has had not only an amazing career, but also has undertaken quite an amazing portfolio career. I'll get William to explain a little bit about that before we start our session. Over to you, William.
Hi, Charlie. Yes, a little bit. In a nutshell, what I'm doing now is a portfolio career. These days, I'm doing perhaps the summary phase of all this is like a portfolio career. I started my career as a McKinsey consultant. Before that, I used to be a neuroscientist by training. Then through McKinsey training, I ventured into various commercial organizations. I helped managing and CEOing multinational companies from all kinds of industries, from telecommunication, internet, to banking, fashion, toys, retailing, and so on and so forth. And behind all this, or underlying all this, actually, I've been doing quite a bit of advisory work as well, mainly as INET for a lot of publicly listed companies for the last 30 years, and also chair a couple of NGOs, mainly in the education area.
Super. Thank you very much indeed, William. Right, let's get into the subject at hand. Stepping up as a senior leader in APAC, as a group CEO. What is it that you think when you look back, and indeed when you look now in your current role as an INED, you would observe that a group CEO has got to really understand and get to grips with?
I first became a CEO back in the late 90s, when I was the CEO of Citibank, Greater China. And looking back and compare to, because I'm a board member of various companies, so I work with a number of CEOs, I see the challenges and tasks they are facing. I wouldn't envy to do one these days, because I think in the last podcast we did together, Charlie, we were talking about the world is actually in chaos, because if you look at all the forces at work, all the external factors, mostly are very negative. Seldom, I think in my 30 plus years of working career, I've never been in a situation to see all forces simultaneously are all negative, because you might have high inflation, high interest rate in a couple of years in a particular part of the world, and you may have a pandemic in one part of the world. But these things, so we are talking about all these global forces at the moment, inflation, high interest rate, pandemic, geopolitics, wars, etc., are all negative. So I think these days, no matter what industry you're in and what part of the world you're in, you're facing a lot of uncertainties. So these, to be stepping up into a C-level, especially a CEO role, to be able to lead an organization, there are many challenges. But we talk about, a couple of things like, because of the uncertainties, the world is now, you need to be able to manage that. We talk about technology has been influencing all kinds of ways of life and businesses as well. How are you going to manage that? And lastly, how are you going to lead and build and design an organization to be able to cope with all these uncertainties, as well as technological challenges as well?
When you look at that, therefore, and you look at your group CEOs, how do you feel you need to support them? How do they need to adjust in this new environment? What sort of techniques have you seen the good ones understand and move towards?
I think let me answer you coming, from the ends coming back to the means. Because what we need in being able to build a company, to be able to not even talking about succeeding, is talking about surviving in this uncertain world. I think you are talking about the importance of the organization being able to be very adaptable, very flexible, but at the same time, you need to have a strategy to be able to assessing the risk and being able to mitigate the risk as well. And also the type of strategies, and you're working with the rest of an organization, you need to be communicating effectively. Transparency is also very important. And as a whole, I think the culture, very important these days, you need to build a very resilient culture. So in a nutshell, I think is you need to be able to build up an organization which is very agile, based on innovation and creativity, and leveraging the power of data, as well as you need to have a very effective means of communicating to various stakeholders.
I think that's a lovely summary. But one of the points I noticed you referenced was other people being involved, because largely I'm wondering whether there's no longer can you really have one person who's likely to be able to do everything. There were occasions when you might be able to do that, but now that probably is less and less possible. So the skill that they've got to have is, as you reference, is leveraging. Just a quick one on leveraging the people around you and the team, and how important it is to have the right team.
I think that leveraging is all the way from the top to the bottom. Now, basically, I think when I said at the top, when we normally talk about an organization, we talk about from a CEO downwards, and for us, especially in Criticaleye, we talk a lot about the involvement of the board, which I think in a uncertain world, and with the company facing all these type of uncertainties going on, I think the board involvement is very important, especially when we talk about these uncertainties crowding various industries, various companies has been so multifaceted. So I don't think any particular one member of the board will have all the knowledge, or the CEO of an organization will have all the knowledge. So you need a good combination. So first and foremost, I think at the board level, if you have a good mix of industry people, functional people, good diversity, and all this will be able to help to make you a more holistic. So that's what I'm trying to talk about. We need a much more holistic board than before. So that's one thing. And when you go down the organization, now obviously, I started my career back in the 80s and my first job is with McKinsey. And at that time, we just invented the 7S model to look at organizational design, from a share value to strategy to structure to staff, skill, so on and so forth. I think those ingredients still valid today, but having said that, I think the design is, first of all, I don't think a particular company can be able to attract all the talents. They need to have all the skills anyway. So they need to be able to work with outside. So what sort of functions, what sort of things need to be subcontract outside? Say, for example, how are you going to partner with different players along your value chain? I think is very important as well. So what I'm trying to say is, as you mentioned, a particular team or even a particular CEO or particular board members won't be able to have all these kinds of knowledge. So being able to have that collaborative and partnership, holistic approach across the organization is very important.
Good. Thank you very much indeed. Another area that is very important, and I know it's an area that you feel some level of comfort with, is technology. And therefore, as a group CEO, what are some of the challenges again? Because it's not just about technology, there's another interesting element as well that you've got to manage. William?
I think the influence, normally we talk about what is technology has to do with your company, or how is technology disrupting your company or your industry as such. But I think these days is probably the other way around. You have to be proactive in seeing that how can you leverage technology. So technology is not only disrupting what you're doing, but is also affecting the whole value chain, as I said. And it's most importantly is technology is affecting all of us, which is the customer. So if you look at it that way, you're thinking that, hey, from the product development, R&D, all the way to marketing and sales, eventually to the customer, has all affected by technology to different degree. So how are you going to leverage? How are you going to do something with that? And I think especially when internet first started in the mid 90s, and gradually into what we call Web 1.0, and then Web 2.0, and now talking about Web 3.0, and then with AI coming along. And what you're seeing is, firstly, this technology cycle is getting shorter and shorter, and the way they disrupt and influence businesses and industries are getting shorter and shorter. And that mostly, I think, when we talk about product and service life cycle is getting shortened, mostly is by technology disruption. So I think as a whole, as a CEO of a company or the board, top management, I think you need to look at and understand very well the impact of various technology on your industry, on your different value chains. And you need to be not just understanding it, but being able to embrace it. Now, that takes a little bit of risk to do so, because is for most companies that might or might not, depends on what industry you're in, but this might or might not be outside your comfort zone. So that is also talking about one of the things we talked earlier about the whole organizational design, the composition of skill set and staff and system, etc., etc. So again, in order to manage that technology, you need to be able to know the influence, you know the disruption, where that is, you know the leveraging, where that is, and being able to design your organization to cope with that. But I think one very important ingredient is, in facing all this technological disruption, you need to build a culture of your organization, which is a learning culture. And being able to learn and upskill your organization and your capabilities of your organization, which is very important. So I think at the end of the day, one needs to be able to leverage technology, in particular AI, various data analytics, and digital in general, to serve customer and do it and analyze and actually redesign your value chain altogether.
I think that's a very interesting point, William, but I think there's one factor that makes it even more challenging, in particular relation to AI. A CEO builds up their career based on rich experience, such that they've got accumulative points of reference. AI came at them from the side. So it's a different challenge, and it's probably going to be more of what leadership is about, different challenges and shorter time frames. What is your observation?
I think a couple of points here. Firstly, AI is so new. I don't think any particular CEO will have, if they tell you that they have a lot of experience, it can't be right, because it's so new. So basically, let me tell you an example. One of the companies I'm a director of, TVB, which is the largest Chinese content media company in Hong Kong. We know that AI is going to disrupt or challenge a lot of content, creation, etc. When you look at Sora and all these new software tools. And obviously, all of us in the board level, as well as top management and CEO, don't have a lot of experience on AI. We know that it's important. So what we have done at the last board meeting is to create a special committee to gather different people and invite different advisors into the team to put together a task force to look at what AI could do and will do to us in the short and medium term.
We referenced early on organisational design, William, and I thought it was a very interesting observation, and it's definitely a subject that is coming up frequently within the community about how to respond to customers and how therefore the organisation needs to be fit for purpose. As therefore a new CEO, what is it that they've got to do and where should their priorities be when looking at this particular subject?
I think especially in the current climate, we talk about all these uncertainties, etc., etc. I think a couple of things on organizational design. I think being able to align your structure with your strategic objectives, I think is more important than ever before. Alignment is easier said than done. And secondly, you need to adapt the design, the whole design. So when we talk about design, I talk about from structure to system to staffing, skill set, etc., etc. You need to be able to design it to cope with the changing market situation as well, because the market is changing so fast. And one of the things with the new technology coming along is how to being able to build a responsive organization is how to balance centralization vis-a-vis decentralization. I think that is not something we have always talking about this, because sometimes we know that, the chain of command, sometimes if you build it in a vertical manner, it could be very effective, but it might not be very responsive. And so whether you want a vertical or horizontal organization, of course, it depends on your industry. But I think you need to be able to get that right. Decentralization, decentralization, vertical versus horizontal, etc. And I think it's also very important to look at the importance of cross-functional collaboration and communication within and outside as well. Because we talked about it before, that it is very difficult these days for any organization to be able to attract and recruit all the people with all the knowledges we need to make a business successful. So you need to be able to partner with people outside. So that collaboration skill and partnership skill is also very important. At the end of the day, I think especially in a uncertain world like this, and we talk about speed and responsiveness is everything, creating a culture of empowerment and accountability is also very important. So I think in a nutshell, I think although some of the key design of an organization, like what I said about the McKinsey 7S, are always there, I think you need to be able to build a future organization which is about speed, about embracing technology and customer responsiveness, and the capabilities of seamlessly integrating all this across the value chain. Thank
you, William. One final point. Culture. We know that phrase, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And this is invariably what is happening within organizations. So they have an intention, they have a direction, but it's a culture that doesn't enable that. So the time that has to be spent working through that out, acknowledging some of the resistance we're going to get, is also very, very important. How the CEO largely sets the culture, the tone of the organization. Do you feel that's true? I think it's true. It's very important. But I think it's actually not started only from the CEO. It has to be started from the board even. I think the board has a pivotal role in helping the company to establish a culture, let's say, for example, innovation, collaboration, partnership, and all these things. I think rather than in the past, at the board level, we talk about strategy setting, business planning, and going through the financials and corporate governance. I think helping the top executive in setting the right culture is going to be very, very important. William, as always, this has been a pleasure to engage you on this podcast. This is the second occasion we've had this opportunity. I think, in actual fact, we should... I did briefly listen to the last one. I must go back again and listen to it, perhaps more closely. But it's a nice evolvement of the role of the CEO and how things are changing. So thank you so very much indeed for your valued input today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Yes, I do. Thank you, Charlie.